January 7th, 2026. Boom! Big boom. Happy New Year. And what a start of this new year it has been. Welcome back to the Global Defense War Monthly Panel. I am John Michael Chambers, and we will cover from a military perspective just what is going on behind the scenes. I will set the stage for this panel with the following from Guardian Daniel R. What is unfolding now is not random enforcement. It is a coordinated multi-year military operation executed under sealed indictments and international wartime jurisdiction. These arrests are not political theater. They are precision strikes against an integrated global criminal network that operated above national law for decades. The targets are not low-level operatives. They are financial controllers, NGO intermediaries, media gatekeepers, pharmaceutical executives, intelligence cutouts, and religious laundering channels used to move money, traffic influence, and shield crimes. The same structure repeats across continents because it was centralized by design. This is why multiple countries are involved simultaneously. Jurisdiction hopping no longer works. Diplomatic immunity no longer protects. Offshore accounts no longer hide assets. Military tribunals bypass corrupted civil courts that were compromised long ago. Financial freezes are already active. Shell foundations are being dismantled. Data servers are being seized. Evidence chains are locked and mirrored across multiple allied commands. This phase is about containment, isolation, and extraction. Public exposure always comes last. The delay people sense is not hesitation, it is sequencing. You do not announce a takedown while the network is still being rounded up. You cut the exits first. This operation is synchronized with global financial restructuring, asset recovery, and institutional collapse prevention. Removing the criminals without stabilizing the system would trigger chaos. That is why the process is controlled, quiet, and methodical. History will record this period as the moment the shadow governance ended. Nothing can stop what's coming. This is dark to light. And remember, where we go one, we go all. Now, our esteemed panel today consists of 5 wartime correspondents. It's great to be back. New year, same panel, new material as the global defense war unfolds. We have retired Lieutenant Colonel Ricardo Bossi, former Australian Army Special Forces. Joining us today is retired Lieutenant Colonel Tom Lennox, retired Army Lieutenant Colonel with extensive experience in logistics, finance, procurement, and large-scale systems management across decades of military and Department of Defense service. Joining us today, of course, is the popular podcaster, incredible service to this country, Michael Jaco, retired veteran Navy SEAL, dedicated a total of 35 years serving the U.S. government in high-risk environments, so you can sleep at night. We also have joining us, of course, is the man that helped me kick this off in conversations of creativity a year or so ago, is our good friend, retired Army Derek Johnson. He's an expert, in my humble opinion, on tabulating and covering the Commander-in-Chief, President Donald J. Trump's laws and orders and current events. That's our panel for today. We have a 4-panel. This is a panel of experts with military and intelligence careers, again, having served the U.S. and Australia with combat experience as well, to cut through the noise to help us be informed through their analysis of what is going on in this war and where things are heading. I want to thank you, gentlemen, for your service to this country. I wish you and your family a safe, healthy, and prosperous new year. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here.
Absolute pleasure.
Bear with me. I'm making some adjustments. Thank you, sir. All right, let's jump right into it. A bit of a monologue there to cue up our audience's attention on where it needs to be and to take a chill pill on the big arrest. We kind of just had one, didn't we? Just the same. Let's get into Venezuela. Let's have this panel unpack Venezuela. There are so many angles with which to discuss this event, and we can begin with this aspect of it. And I'll peel some layers back and guide our guests through this. But let's begin with the constitutionality and the legality of Commander in Chief Donald J. Trump's actions. The narratives from not only the left, mainstream media, and so forth, but as well as from the less grounded target audience within the MAGA movement, stating that President Trump is a war criminal. He's acting without mandate from Congress. He's violating international law, and he's violating the Constitution. We'll begin this panel to weigh in on just that issue. We'll come back in Venezuela in a moment with follow-ups, but let's begin there with retired Lieutenant Colonel, our good friend Ricardo Bosi in Australia. Take that on, sir, if you will.
Thanks, John. Good morning, good evening, all. Great to be here. Okay, let's set the scene. That was a good shaping of the question from that quote from The Guardian, simply because people have to realize this is one long continuous operation, 70 years in the making at least, longer than that if you want to go back that far. So up until this point, many operations have taken place. So to take DJT's actions in isolation now as if they just occurred, we woke up one happy morning and all chaos had broken loose in Venezuela, is naive and uninformed, to say the least. So this is the tail end of a very long and patient operation. Now, up to this point, it's been, by and large, ostensibly a special op. There's been conventional forces employed. But what we call, and there's a number of ways to say it, but special operations tasks fall into several categories. I'm not going to give you all of them, but just so you're aware what's been going on today. What we call special collection operations, gathering information. That can be reconnaissance, surveillance, dialogues, interviews, espionage, HUMINT, ELINT. There's a number of ways of collecting the data that needed to be used to take these steps. And bear with me, I know there's a slow answer to your question. There have been direct action operations, which is the delivery of kinetic effects behind the scenes, clandestine, covert, kinetic work being done as well throughout the years. And as you know, I've said before, a guerrilla war, which is largely what the White Hats have been fighting, stays underground and then transitions to conventional in order to have that final victory. Special protection operations, protecting personnel, protecting facilities. That's been going on as well. Support operations of various sorts. There's so many support operations that special ops do. And there's also the unconventional warfare, insurgency, counterinsurgency, foreign internal defense. All these operations, and you can look them up online to get a bigger breakdown, but all these things have been taking place in preparation for this last phase. Now, what is this last phase? And as I said, a guerrilla war has to transition to conventional, above the ground, obvious actions to finally win. And that's what we're seeing now, this kinetic aspect of it. And what we're going through now is a global recovery operation. It's a siege hostage situation. You've got to look at the entire planet as one siege hostage situation. It's like a huge block of flats, and every room is a separate country. There's multiple floors in this block of flats, and every room is a separate country, and every room has a terrorist holding hostages. And what the White Hats have had to do is look at this complex target, this block of flats with 100+ rooms, and each room has people in it, and they have terrorists holding them hostage. And the people don't even know they're being held hostage. They're just there. They're being fed. They're being entertained. They're being told whatever they need to know, and they don't know they're hostage. And so the White Hats have had to, over a long period of time, conduct their preliminary operations to understand the scope, scale of what's been going on. And now they're ready to conduct this recovery. Now, the reason I gave you that long introduction is this. During the mission is always the same, to save the lives of the hostages. It's not to kill the terrorists, it's to save the lives of the hostages, because what that does, that narrows significantly the options open to the assault force. There's a famous case where an aircraft was on the tarmac, I think it was in Germany, and they attacked the aircraft. The aircraft burnt to the ground, and most of the hostages were killed. not a successful operation. So for those of you who have been patiently for something, this is the point. This global recovery operation, this global siege hostage situation, the mission is to save the lives of the hostages. Hence, the what appears to be slow or delayed actions have just been measured, because there's no point saving the planet if people die. And they either die during the recovery or from the psychotic shock. Now, this psychotic shock of the planet is key, because that's a major concern and has been for some time. And that's why it's very slow. So there you go. Now, the second part that'll follow this, just to keep the context of where we're going, is what they call stability operations. Now, the first part I wanted was the recovery bit, and the mission is to save the lives of the hostages. What follows is stability, and stability meaning the re-establishment of a functioning system, and predicated on something that'll make sure it never happens again. And that word is sovereignty. So they're the two words or phrases that you need to get to while we discuss the entire show today, from my perspective anyway. Save the lives of the hostages and sovereignty. Save the lives and sovereignty. Now, they seem like two very, one's tactical and one's strategic, and it seems odd. But unless we bear those two words in our minds throughout, it doesn't really make sense. Now, the constitutionality of what DJT has done. As I said, this has been the continuation of an operation. We also know that it appears to be unconstitutional. It appears to be a war that has not been declared by the Congress, which is required by your constitution. But the constitution hasn't declared war for a long time, and yet actions have been taken by any number of presidents. You know, the Korean War, for example, was a police action. It wasn't a war, believe it or not. You tell the soldiers that fought there that that was a police action and not a war. And so the finery of whether the DJT has been authorized to execute what appears to be the invasion of a sovereign nation without due cause and without legal justification. Well, we know that this is a continuation of an operation. We know that the grounds for his actions are predicated on the fact that he is actually running this corporation, this continuity from the corporation, from this corporation to this continuity of operations. He is actually running a war. He is a wartime president. That was declared. So there is no illegality about it. And you would have heard us say many, many times on this show that the legal underpinnings of every action by the White Hats is key. And so they've got there, I guess that's a way to set the tone for, is it legal? Is it okay? Is what he's doing above board? Absolutely, by every metric. And I'll probably leave it there for the time being.
Well, thank you very much. And that's a great metaphor or analogy, if you will, that you walked us through in that dialogue. And I hope that that helps everybody put this into perspective. We're going to come back to you, Lieutenant Colonel Ricardo Bosi, in a moment. I've got a B and a C follow up on Venezuela, but let's take, before we go there, let's take the same question to the panel. Colonel Lennox, President Trump is a war criminal. He's acting without a mandate from Congress. He's violating international law. He's violating the Constitution. What's your opening statement about that and Venezuela in general?
Well, I would go back to the Monroe Doctrine in 1800s, where Mr. Monroe said that any foreign nation attempting to do anything in this hemisphere would be subject to United States pressure. That has not changed. The foreign intervention in Venezuela justifies going in, and it is a constitutional thing because it was established by a former president who did the same thing. The people who object the most are the 60 senators who are getting their money from Venezuela. It's pretty straightforward. They get a whole lot of money from the leadership in Venezuela, and they don't like the fact that Trump is going in there and cleaning up getting their money. If we go back in a little bit of history, we could find out that the Rockefellers actually controlled Venezuela for many, many years by running the oil and then selling it back to them after they refined it in Barbados. So there are so many things about this. And plus, the CIA has been running Venezuela for years and years for the drugs, the human trafficking, the oil, and the people. So when we look at it, we're actually taking our own people out of there and we're cleaning up what's been going on for years and years and years. Sovereignty, which Ricardo talked about, is critical for people, all people. And what we're doing is recreating that sovereignty. And when we talk about the birth certificate next week, we'll talk a lot about sovereignty and what that means. That's pretty much a summary of what I see. I see nothing wrong with what he's doing.
Thank you, sir. Michael Jaco, again, we're going to plow into a lot of different aspects on this in a moment, but address, if you will, the issue at hand here, the challenges that are being put forward by the left and by, again, the less grounded target audience, if you will, about the unconstitutionality of the president's moves. I want to put this to bed.
Yeah, we can go back to Panama, the Panama invasion. I was involved in that with SEAL Team 6, hunting for Noriega. Noriega basically said that he was going to restrict us from using the Panama Canal. So, of course, we were like, well, that's not going to happen since we built that. And so we protected our interest, and we went in and made sure we had control of that canal. So we took him out of office, and things progressed very well after that. I remember walking through the streets in Panama City and people coming out and applauding and very, very happy that we had come in and done that. Venezuela will probably get that at some point. I hear that they're kind of locked down by this regime still. Delta came in and did an amazing job. I guess they went through about 32 Cuban bodyguards. By saying they went through 32, I'm talking about they eliminated 32 Cuban bodyguards. And just as Maduro was closing his very, thick steel door, he was stopped just before he did that. Now, we've heard that Democrats were trying to alert him. So we're going to see a lot more of that reveal coming up. It's a problem. Obviously, we're talking about how cartel members are probably starting to run and hide, because they're like, in 3 minutes, they basically took down one of their top guys. And that's going to happen probably 4 more going forward. So the Chinese are down in South America in a big way. President Trump has talked about how they have ports in Panama. And I've heard that they had statues and so forth, and the Panamanians are turning them over. They're getting ready to exit from Panama. So the whole, Central and South America is moving in the right direction. Today, the Venezuelan stock market was up massively. So it's a lot of people are happy about this. Now, President Trump has said Cuba is going to be going soon. I hear that the Cubans are celebrating as well because of that. Colombia will also be at issue because their president, like Noriega, like, come and get me. Maduro, come and get me. And now we have the president of Colombia say, come and get me. I think he's going to be not very long for that office. So this is President Trump. When he makes a promise, he keeps it. He is a man of his word. And we're going to see Central and South America cleaned up. And even going to Iran, we're going to see that get cleaned up as well. So it's a worldwide event that's happening that all of us are seeing. It's very clear to us. So very, very positive time.
You bet. Thank you. And we're going to jump into some of the countries you mentioned and some others in a moment. Take the same question to Derek Johnson, the illegality of President Trump's moves. What would you like to say to your target audience?
The one time that I should have been ranked higher than these guys, but it didn't work out that way. I could have teed them up big time. But President Trump always says, be careful what you wish for. And it's applicable to every situation. Follow the money. All right. So they followed the money. Maduro was put there by whom? Obama. All right. That was 2013. Dominion system. All this ties into the image you had up, the 13848 executive order. President Trump, as soon as they took Maduro, President Trump started posting all on True Social about the voting, Georgia, Wisconsin, different places. And then people got to remember, we put sanctions on Venezuela. So a sanction would be like putting a judgment on someone in a court, right? Well, then you get to collect from that. So that's what we're doing. We're collecting that oil. And there's a quote that President Trump said, I cannot remember when, but there was a time that he said specifically last year where he said specifically, why didn't we take the oil? And he was talking about Iraq. Well, to the average listener, right, whether you're a Democrat or Republican, but especially a Democrat, they would say that, oh, it was all about oil. You listen to what President Trump said. He doesn't make mistakes. He's very keen on terminology. Why didn't we take the oil? He was talking about we, meaning like past tense. So nothing to do with him, nothing to do with present or future tense. He's talking about past tense with Iraq. Why didn't we take the oil? The United States of America. Wow. That is a big allusion to whom? Obama, right? The Bidens, Bushes, et cetera, all the way back. So he's telling you that all these wars in the past were not about taking the oil. He said, if we're going to go in there, why don't you take the oil from them? Because that's one of the key things that keeps them functioning in these nations, how they operate. Money. Money rules the world, right? All right, then go back to 2017 to 2021. The capitulations. Every single one of these operations are operations. They're not wars. And a lot of people out there saying about a war criminal. Well, it actually has to be a war to be anything in that sort. These are strikes, strategic strikes, and strategic operations. And what these people are lacking are the executive orders. Well, guess what? Every single one of these strikes, Iran, Yemen, Venezuela, Ukraine, those are all executive orders from Obama all the way back to Carter. All right, so they're all carrying a national emergency. It's not a national emergency anymore after it's 40 plus years old. The oldest national emergency right now is 1979, which, not going to make everybody feel old here, is older than me. All right, so it's not a national emergency anymore. All right, so all of these operations. Last spring, no one was yelling about Yemen. We were just as much involved, our military, with Yemen. You didn't hear any of these people out there. So they're showing their colors that they only react to what they're told to react to. And then this is your meat of the subject right now. National emergency. Everything that President Trump is working with, he's taking everything that they did. Be careful what you wish for. Right? He's taking everything that Congress did to limit the president on what his constitutional duties are, simultaneous and side by side with the Congress. In 1973, overriding a presidential veto, Congress passed the new War Powers Resolution Act and made it to where a president had to declare a national emergency and in 48 hours had to alert the Congress on his use of military. He had 60 days and then a 30-day withdrawal period, a total of 90 days. After that 90 days, there had to be a congressional authorization to use the military anymore. We have a congressional authorization. Everybody out there talking about Congress has to have an authorization for President Trump to be doing this. We have that. Title 50, Chapter 33, which is your War Powers Resolution Act. Chapter 33, Section 1550. It was put there December the 20th, 2019 by a Democratic controlled House of Representatives where Nancy Pelosi was the Speaker of the House and a Republican controlled Senate. It was part of the National Defense Authorization Act. All right. Then President Trump played all these people for fools again. He got them out there chanting no kings and all this thing. We went 77 days from no kings to they're taken up for a dictator. And he got them all out there chanting that law enforcement should be involved with this. Well, what did it say? What did his official post say? That Maduro is in the hands of whom? Law enforcement? Well, they'll probably start chanting real soon again that this is not our duty, not their jurisdiction, like they did with the National Guard being in the city streets, which there's an answer for that militarily. Joint Publication 3-57. Go to page 46 in it. It specifically says that generally you don't want Title 10, Department of now War, then Defense, as it'll read in that book. But it says generally you don't want Department of Defense military involved with civil unless, and that's the terminology everybody has to listen to. Unless what? It says unless deemed by who? Congress or the Constitution. Well, there's your deeming. If you want to be slang and be funny here and be lightful, but also, hey, this is all you need to know. Title 50, Chapter 33, Section 1550 is that congressional authorization. So President Trump is not a war criminal, but as Jaco and everybody else alluded to here, this has been planned strategically for a long time. And this is the cleanup process. This is what we call our licking the chops. And Jaco here, being the Navy SEAL, I had to smile when I heard Delta Force and I saw the image of the guys with the lights out. When the lights go out, baby, it's game over. Right. So all this, that's your visual that all this had been taken care of. So when the lights go out, it's night for the bad guys.
Thank you, Derek. And to our audience, if you're running into challenges in your life and social circles, social media, and so forth about the issue of the lack of constitutional authority and so forth and the president, send them this segment. We're going to start with Derek and work our way in reverse now. Derek, while this, and I may be barking up the wrong tree, you can set me straight. While this is part of the operation, I, for one, have seen many, shall we say, oddities concerning the events. We're talking about Maduro, the arrest, the whole situation. I've seen many oddities concerning these events as they are shown to us on the news and on social media. Now, that's what we get to see. That's what we get to watch. How scripted is this? And is this, once again, something that perhaps to an extent has already occurred? And once again, we are watching a movie. Am I barking up the wrong tree? Any comments about that aspect of what we just saw unfold? We'll start with Derek Johnson.
Could be. What's been brilliant about all this is the fact that there's a hybrid warfare that's been going on. There's been a lot of irregular warfare, unconventional warfare, asymmetrical warfare, guerrilla warfare, and you integrate all that together. It's called hybrid warfare, which means you can use different kind of tactics. But basically, yes, most of it's been scripted, most of it's been strategic, all right, meaning pre-planned. But sometimes there could be where you keep someone on the playing field because they may be someone who, it may not be a high target, but they may be someone that can play into this and have a guilty conscience, tell on someone, and you trap them and you funnel them. And I like to use the verbiage where everything's a Trump wall, where you funnel them into a wall. And that's why President Trump has used a lot of the verbiage with the law of war manual and the law of land warfare, like occupied territory. He calls it occupied country, white flag of surrender, and actually it's the white flag of truce, and then puppet government, government exile, and then the word restoration. The term restoration is found in the law of land warfare. So he's used all those terms for the last 9 years, and the media has as well. Those are your comms, as we call them, to show you that this is all straight up military publications, military law, and most of it's scripted, but it can be to where, yeah, like let's just for example, like we were talking about a while ago, Venezuela, Yemen, Ukraine, Congo, all these nations are in executive orders from Obama and back, Iran. So it could be to where it would be a live action, but most of these, I'm willing to bet from the high up, most of these have already taken place, such as the Iran situation, because that would have required a lot of cleanup, especially with the nuclear, and that's also dangerous for everybody involved as well. It has to be very strategic, very planned out. But other things like President Trump and the media. I've been around real President Trump. I know the people that know real President Trump, and the people think that the man that everybody thinks they're seeing, is a double. But that's just using, and Jaco can allude to this depending on how much he can, and could, but that's just the CIA. They've been using this for years, and it's just basically using tactics that are there. It's kind of like guerrilla warfare. JFK said this in 1962. He said that our military needed to be dominant in guerrilla warfare because our enemy would be. And if we're not dominant, then the enemy will be. So guerrilla warfare, a lot of civilians hear that and they automatically think bad. And a lot of our warfare, it can be good when it's good, but it's worse when it's bad. It's never bad when it's bad. It's worse when it's bad. But our enemy dominates with that. So some of this is scripted, some of it's live, but like the Congress, they're all still under a partial continuity government. But it's still, you have to see who's going to do what as we move forward. You have to see who can be compromised. So all these guys here, I was going to start the last segment out with this, and it's so simple. But President Trump said with COVID that the cure cannot be bigger than the problem, right? So you can take out the word cure and put in the resolution can't be bigger than the problem. And all of us, if we didn't know each other, let's just say this, but if we didn't know each other, but we're all secret military, how would we know each other in the room? Well, we would know each other by simple measures because of tactics that we all know and skill sets we all have, right? And the skill sets that especially these men right here have, because they have them a lot more years than I have and a lot more operations, but they can find the hiccups of someone who doesn't have that because they are that skilled. So some of these you want to leave open and let them trip up because it'll lead to, like Lieutenant Colonel Bosie was saying, more hostages, the children who have been under the tunnels. It can lead to more things. So it's an open playing field. Some of it scripted, some of it can still be live for those various reasons.
Thank you, Derek. Michael, Jekyll, yeah, same sort of question. How much is scripted? And I'll throw this in the mix. Some folks out there are saying that Maduro's already been done away with some years ago, and we're watching sort of an actor in its place. Along the lines of that sort of dialogue, do you care to comment on this, Michael?
Yeah, that's a possibility. Now, Derek mentioned JFK in 1962. That's when the Navy SEALs were started. Nice. So, in the Panama invasion, like I was involved in, now we're seeing Delta was involved there. Now we're seeing Delta go in and do this hit. Delta's gone in and done a lot of stuff that no one knows about. Right. So, from my training and from my, view, I can see a lot of these things happening. Now, Osama bin Laden. So I was in Pakistan when that happened. A lot of people think that OBL was already dead, and that's very, very possible. It could have been a double that was playing his role, which didn't turn out so good for that double, if that's the case, because I saw the real-time footage, just like President Trump was talking about. He was watching real-time footage. So there's a lot of, play acting that goes on a lot of times. We saw OBL, a lot of different looking OBLs over the years. Maybe if we look at Maduro, we'll see some different ones. I don't know. But another thing that President Kennedy was doing was bringing in silver during his administration. And I believe we're going in that direction again. So breaking down monetary systems, coming in and, closing out systems that are running down in South America and Central America, with, like we talked about, China. China's down there in force. The Cubans were obviously there in force. That's all getting cleaned up all through all of those countries. And we're going to see, like President Trump was talking about, we're going to start to control the oil. And that's an asset of the United States. All of the trading that's going on right now, most of the countries in South America right now are trading with China over United States. So we're protecting our interest. It's going to continue. We're going to clean that up. There's no problem with free trade, but China's taking advantage of that on a massive level. And I think as we move forward, we're going to see more and more of that. Now, as far as Maduro, I looked at very suspect. He seemed to be in like several different outfits when they brought him in. So staged, obviously staged movements. So when you see him in, he was in his like on the aircraft, he's in a certain uniform. He's got his blackouts and his headphones on, so he can't see or hear what's going on. And then you see him walking. It looks like going across a beach in another like blue jumpsuit or something. It's crazy. And then you see him going through the ICE headquarters. He's in another outfit. So these are all staged movements, for the camera. But that doesn't mean that he wasn't, or someone like him wasn't taken. And we know that there was heavy intel down there on him. They knew everything about his movements, his dogs, what he ate, everything about his quarters. Delta is exceptional, as well as SEAL Team 6 at rehearsing for these types of events. So they probably had a mock-up of his home, and the guys were like doing that for months of training. I guarantee you. So that's the way we operate. So when you go in and you do these missions, it's very, very surgical, very quick, very precise. And I wish I'd been there. It must have been amazing. So as we move forward, we're going to see more. We may even see them. I don't know if we're going to go in this direction, but we may even see them in some of the cities, because we're seeing Colorado is basically, really pushing back on President Trump really hard. They're breaking the law. And I joked, not really joked, but I said probably well over a month ago, 6 weeks ago or so, that I wouldn't be surprised to see SEAL Team 6 guys or Delta guys go in and do a rescue mission in Colorado. So we'll see, how things move. I think things are going to move along very quickly. The fraud is being exposed and so forth throughout the United States. That's going to bring attention to election theft, and that'll probably bring around an executive order, emergency executive order for President Trump to push out the military to make sure we have fair elections going forward.
Thank you, Michael, for bringing clarity on the Maduro moves and the staging and the identifying of different clothing as part of that staging. That's great stuff. We're going to come and talk about some other issues pertaining to Venezuela. We're going to get into a completely different subject. And you mentioned silver, Michael. We're going to close out on the currencies of the world and the issue with the central bank and the silver moves as well. Same question to Colonel Lennox. Stage, scripted. What's your weigh in on this event as it's unfolding?
Given the way Trump has operated over the last 10 years, 12 years, I would say that it was scripted. I had heard the other day that Maduro was arrested in 2021 under the continuation of government by Trump. We have actors, 200,000 of them, playing different people. And the senators who are so upset about Venezuela, most of them are probably actors based on certain things that I've read over the last couple of years. So the whole idea of a movie is you want to get people ready for the finale. And this Venezuela is part of getting ready for the finale. And I see, we can bring in masks on all these people and nobody would be able to tell that they were not the real thing. So, I think it's mostly scripted because it already happened.
As I speculated, thanks to the panel for weighing in on that. Ricardo, Lieutenant Colonel Bosi, if you want to weigh in on this issue, I'm sure you have some valuable contributions. We've lost your audio, sir. Producer and
Thanks. No, I agree with all. I agree with all the comments so far, without a doubt. It's mostly scripted, if not entirely scripted. And if people have difficulty comprehending that idea, just look at the NFL. The entire season is planned out, every pass, every catch, whether somebody gets injured or not, and when they get injured, and they just accept it, and it's played out. So if you do that with a football match, with the resources that they have, you can imagine what you can imagine what the US government can do in terms of scripting an operation. Yeah, Maduro and the rest were taken down some time ago. It didn't mean brave things weren't done by brave people. Of course they were. There was still a
Yeah.
job to be done. But you're not going to put the actors on stage and pull the curtain back until you've rehearsed it, so the performance is flawless. And there's no room for error here. And so it's been, if not entirely scripted, then certainly mostly scripted. And if you want another clue to that, I think DJT was quoted as saying, as he was watching the live feed, it's almost like watching a TV show. There you go. What I don't think was scripted, for example, though, was the vision coming out of Venezuela of people in the streets hugging, crying, cheering, and celebrating their freedom. And that's go back to this block of units I was telling you about, so condominiums, 100 rooms, terrorists holding people in each room. Well, each of the terrorists has been replaced, but the people inside don't know that, and they're going to say, you can go now, and they're going to go, fantastic. And so, yeah, mostly scripted, if not entirely, but hard work still had to be done by some very talented people. So I'm not dismissing, people shouldn't get the idea that this was all very easy. I don't know, it was very difficult, very complex, and ultimate professionalism to execute it as they have done so.
Thank you, sir. You know, I interviewed Patrick Byrne a couple of months ago on Conversations of Consequence, the other broadcast show that I produce, and he actually broke some news there and stated it as breaking news. Of course, he later went on to Emerald Robinson and really unpacked it all about what was going on in Venezuela and the mission he and others were on, and took great risk in their life in delivering this intel to and for the world. So, off the heels of that, why did we take down Maduro? We'll start with Ricardo, sir. Why did we take down Maduro? What are some of the benefits? Because they aren't, as I connect the dots, there's a lot of benefits and revelations to come from this operation that were really at the tip of the iceberg on. So, I guess the concise question is, what are the takeaways? What are the benefits and revelations that we're going to learn about, are learning about, and action steps that will be taken? And does it have global impact?
Well, so focusing on why Maduro. Venezuela, we know it's the center for global election fraud, global election fraud. The narco dollars that are funding everything on the planet are one of the major sources for that. And we can talk in more detail later, because we know that the cabal only uses two things to get people to do what they want. One is to pray to their god, Satan. The other is the money. And that's why the money is key. That's why Great Britain had its opium war with China. It was all about generating profit, because money buys whatever you want. Countries, sultans, you name it. That's what makes the world go around, quite literally. But let's focus more forensically on why Maduro, the man. Why was he taken down? Is he some sort of cabal bigwig with the control of this operation? Absolutely not. Like every other national leader that you can see on your screen, he's nothing but a puppet. Nothing but a puppet. But what's important was what the message here was very, very clever. They took down an individual as a result of legitimate criminal activities against the United States, but they left the rest of the regime in place. Now, why is that important? Because this is not regime change, old school CIA cabal. This is very, very different. This is saying, you're a crook, we're going to take you and we're going to lock you up. Now, the fact they've taken Maduro some time ago and he spilled the beans, that's a separate issue. But as far as the show is concerned, every other country on the planet watching this will see the corrupted leaders frog marched away in manacles, but the people will still have the opportunity to choose the leadership for themselves. And this is fundamentally important to what the world is about to experience. The Venezuelan government is still in charge. The deputy has been sworn in. There's this continuity. Everybody's happy. The Americans aren't the big bad wolf. They're the knights in shining armor. that are actually pulling out the individual that's caused problems. And his predecessor, Hugo Chavez, the communist dictator that retired with billions of dollars in his pocket, again, not because he's some sort of genius, again, just another puppet. And if I could just embarrass someone internationally, please, let me just take a small step aside. We have this piece of filth in Australia called Philip Adams. Now, Philip Adams made his money in advertising, so the man has no soul. And then he promptly spent the next many years on the staff of the Australian Broadcasting Corporation, otherwise known as the Australian Bolshevik Collective. And he, for years, has been telling us that we should take a leaf out of Hugo Chavez's book. He said that Hugo Chavez, what he was doing for Venezuela, our political leaders should do for Australia. Now, the reason I mention that is of no interest to anybody else on the planet, but Australia's got to wake up and realise that the most trusted faces on the public broadcast are nothing but communists whose entire purpose was to destroy this nation. Okay, having said my little ad, Philip Adams, look him up. The guy's a piece of filth that needs to be hung by his neck till he's dead. Separate issue. Back to Maduro. So Maduro's gone. The government is still in place. They've sworn in the deputy. It's not regime change. And it comes back to this: the people have to choose. And DJT actually said the opposition leader is no good because she hasn't got the trust of the people. Why? Because she didn't win the election. Now, do we know the election was rigged? Yes. Would she have won? Probably. Not the point. What is going on here is this, as Michael said, these are a series of operations. And this is very specifically focused with limits of exploitation, very strict limits beyond which they could not go. Let's remove the problem and then let the country re-establish its own destiny. Now, this ties to the national security strategy, which has been published, and we keep reminding, get online, look it up, read it. This is the plan they're following. This is what you've got to understand. And everything that Trump has done fits into this document quite nicely. And so this is now the model of what we'll see around the rest of the planet. We've seen simultaneously a lot of military air movements, particularly in the United Kingdom and elsewhere. And we're going to see the same model, I believe, where corrupted leaders are pulled out. Legitimacy of the government must be re-established. So, sanitizing of the electoral process and a free and fair election if that is necessary, if the processes are there. We know that every government is under control. There hasn't been a government on this planet that has not been under control. Whether it's a national, state, local, councils, you name it, all under control. But it's not regime change. It is removing a problem and then allowing the people the opportunity to now decide for themselves their destiny. And this comes back to this sovereignty issue. It's all about choice. And you're going to hear a lot of that word a lot, choice. If people are sovereign, if they are the source of law, which we hold that they are, then people are free to make a choice. Now, if they want to elect another communist, hey, fill your boots. But if another communist gets in and starts doing the narco trafficking again, you're going to get the same result. But this is where the White Hat plan is quite exquisite. Pull out the problem, get rid of it, and allow the people the ability to start re-establishing their own destiny. And this is, again, bit by bit, we'll see this rolled out across the planet. Different countries, situations, so it won't be necessarily a military action. For example, in Australia, you wouldn't need a military action. All you need is the Governor-General to dissolve the Parliament, which she is authorised and required to do if it acts unconstitutionally. She's required by our Constitution to warn them. If they continue, then she dissolves the Parliament. There's a precedent for this. There is not a problem with it. She appoints an executive council, which is the equivalent of a cabinet. The Constitution actually says an executive council. We colloquially refer to as a cabinet, an executive council to then run the affairs of state under her direction for 3 months before they are required to face an election. So different countries will have different means of achieving the same objective. Remove the problem and re-establish a process where the people can determine their own sovereign destiny.
Excellent. What a process about to unfold here. And to the gentleman you referred to in Australia, whose name I didn't retain, birds of a feather comes to mind since he's favoring the policies of Hugo Chavez. That should be a wake-up call for the Australians. Mike, where are we going here? We're going to, let's see, we started with Ricardo. Lieutenant Colonel Lennox, you care to weigh in on the benefits and revelations that are coming from this operation in Venezuela. We've discussed elections and some other aspects. Any contribution to that aspect of this?
I think the biggest one is getting a hold of the computers that control the computers that Venezuela has distributed.
Yes.
And I saw something the other day that the intelligence chief of Venezuela has given all of the information about all of the election systems and all of the other things that have gone on in Venezuela to the U.S. because he doesn't want to hang, because he directed all of those things. And I really like the fact that we're going to find out what 60 senators were drawing their paycheck from Venezuela, since they were elected that way. And I don't have a whole lot on that other than the fact that we found the equipment. We know where it is. We know what it is. We know what the problems are. And we've got the whistleblowers to tell us exactly how the software and the hardware work together to rig elections.
Very critical. Thank you. Yeah, very important. Thank you, sir. Michael Jaco, same question. Benefits, revelations from the operation.
Yeah, I think the benefits are going to be phenomenal. I know that after they went in and they seized the computers and so forth from Osama bin Laden, there was a lot of things that happened after that. I was working for the CIA at the time, so I was privy to a lot of activity that went around a world, taking down cells and so forth. So that was a benefit. So those guys going in, why did it take as long as it did? Because I can tell you it's probably they could have been out of there a lot faster. We're probably seizing some information as well from that his mansion, and brought some of that back. So that's going to be very insightful. We're going to see even all the way back to Hugo Chavez, the election fraud that was coming from Venezuela, and how many people are in office or were in office because of election fraud. That's going to be exposed. The drug cartels that have been funding a lot of our congressmen and senators, not just in Washington, D.C., but also throughout almost all the states, governors, and so forth. That's going to be exposed. So there's going to be a lot of people that are going to, they're not going to be very happy, and they're going to fight. So watch who pushes back the hardest, right? Who has the most to lose? That's where you need to, because most people like myself and everyone in this group, we're like, this is fantastic. Everyone should be, this is fantastic. We're stopping the drugs from coming into the United States. Now, I'm also seeing what we're, all of these setups that are going to be exposed. Now, if we look at in Australia, where we had the Bondi Beach, false flag event, we're going to start to see a lot of that get exposed. How these guys come in and do these false flags. This is going to be part of, I think, the operations that we're seeing right now. So if you look at the dates, 14 December was also Sandy Hook. So you start to see how they basically just do the same operations over and over and over again. Now, when I was in Australia, SEAL Team 6, working with the Australian SAS, they had the Port Arthur massacre. And I remember the guys were saying, they're going to take away our guns. This is a bullshit, another false flag. They were saying it back then. So we can see through these things, but most people unfortunately can't. So that's why I enjoy coming on and doing these shows, because we really expose a lot of stuff in these shows. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you, and the rest of our panel, very much on behalf of everyone around the world listening to this. These are important monthly broadcasts that we do, and nobody knows better than these gentlemen about these operations because they ran in these operations, of course, for the benefit of the human race versus the other side. They know, and so our audience really needs to listen. This is a panel of military and intelligence experts, and I can't thank you enough. I want to pedal back real quick to something Colonel Lennox said. It reminds me of, and don't, maybe I'm off on the percentage, but I think it was Julian Assange who reminded us a while back, and I'm sure those clips can be found, that 95% of Congress will be said and done, when it's all said and done, gone because of all the crimes and things they've been involved in. And you raise that point as it relates to Venezuela. You keep referring to the 60 congressmen and women that have lined their pockets off the backs of the Venezuelan people. So I'm glad you raised that issue. Derek Johnson, you want to say
Can
something?
we add to that
Yes,
a little
please.
bit? Tim Kaine is a senator from Virginia, and he's screaming loudest because he spent time many years ago in South America as a Jesuit in the Roman Catholic Church. And he trained youth in Latin America. And so he's screaming loudest because he's probably getting the most money. And when we look at that and we see that, my wife keeps asking me, how come Kaine's showing up all over the place? That's why, because that's where his money
Makes sense.
comes from.
I think of our good friend Scott McKay, Patriot Street Fighter. He uses the term quite often, smoke out operation. You've got this sort of just as an added benefit to the operation in Venezuela. It's a smoke out operation in the seats and halls of Congress and all over this world. Fascinating observations. Derek, take this on, and we're going to move into some new territory. Benefits and revelations coming from the operation as it's unfolding in Venezuela.
Well, I'm going to add to what he said before I hop on that and add to Kaine. The very first person to allude to the War Powers Resolution Act was Kaine. All right. And then also Bernie Sanders just said we need to, Congress needs to reassert themselves. Reassert and assert are two different terminologies, ladies and gentlemen. Reassert. He said they need to make an amendment to end this. In what? Right, so that's perfect analogy. The smoke out, and the one who crows the loudest and is screaming the loudest that someone else is doing something over here. They're trying to cover something up, right? So that's all scripted. It's all part of it. But getting to back to Maduro, same kind of concept. We know for a fact that he was put into place in 2013. It all ties into the good versus evil. But keep in mind, again, remember before we go any further, that President Trump said this in 2020 election. Then he said, we have it all. We've caught them all. All right. So that shows you that majority of this is scripted. All right. That doesn't mean that the operations didn't take place, but it's like Lieutenant Colonel Bosey said, the operations did take place, right? The manpower, all the militaries doing what they were doing, that did take place. That's not taken away from that. But when you talk about clandestine and covert, it's all underground until we want you to see it. So that's the key thing with that. So Maduro being put into place, it's not a regime change. It's a regime destruction. All right. And it's exposure to the hierarchy of what this deep state, the cabal, as we call them, the swamp that President Trump is draining. I always tell people that there's a saying that I added in my book. It says chaos plus division equals power acquisition. All right. And it still goes back to good versus evil. People always ask me all the time, like, why do you guys fight so hard? And I said, well, somebody has to for you, right? Somebody has to be the good in the world. And the Bible shows us that. The good word shows us that. Somebody has to be that good. Somebody has to be that light. We choose to be that light. All right. And then the other thing to show people is this, is that wars and power always revolve around the same swinging doors. Power is the key word, but then under that umbrella, it's always resources, territory, and money. That's what everything revolves around. And the Bible tells you it's not money that's the root of all evil. It's the lust of money that's the root of all evil. And so you see all these different people around the world, the parties, and just like Lieutenant Colonel Bosey was talking about the NFL, look at all these people playing a sport for a living, right, making hundreds of millions of dollars to catch a pigskin, right, that maybe you played in your backyard, but then they'll turn around and tell you how bad life is sometimes and all these other things. And it's like, give me a break. So Maduro being put into place, it could be a situation where we don't know what was scripted. We don't know what the real Maduro, he may have been tired of being the dictator. He may spill all the beans and back, where he's detained. All right. We all know this, even in regular criminal cases. You separate all the people, and every one of them, it depends on how good that psychological operation is. And you get in there, and that detective or whoever it is saying, hey, your buddy's right over here spilling all the beans on you. They may spill all the beans on them. So it could be a lot of that. And that's why I tell people all the time, they can still be evil, sure, but they can still have a guilty conscience and spill all the beans. And I think that Maduro is going to spill the beans on the voting systems. All right. And then Lieutenant Colonel Bosey held up the national security strategy. I highly recommend everybody read that. It's very key that you read it. It's a lot of things you need to read, but the national security strategy. And then Lieutenant Colonel Lennox was talking about the Monroe Doctrine, 1823. All right. And President Trump talks about the Monroe Doctrine, but then the Western Hemisphere, right? That is in the terminology of the Monroe Doctrine, but it's also found in Executive Order 13919, which came after the congressional authorization. It specifically mentions the Western Hemisphere, enhanced counter-narcotics operation in the what? Western Hemisphere in 2020. So all this started way back then. And then the Indo-Pacific Agreement. People wonder why we have interests everywhere else as well. It all ties in because this is all of their playing ground. And you alluded to, we're going to talk about the central banks. All this ties in. It's bringing down the whole network of all of their systems, right? One by one, piece by piece, strategically, in the domino effect, but also in the 5D master chess that not only President Trump is, but our generals and our admirals and other people that you see here on the panel, different people who are secret military, et cetera, everybody who's pulling their weight where you're supposed to. Right, so there's that. The capitulations, they all tie in. All the nations that capitulated show who came aboard with President Trump in this plan. Because when President Trump walked in there, ladies and gentlemen, this is no disrespect whatsoever to our commander-in-chief, but President Trump was able to do that because of the plan behind him. He was able to walk in and say, you better get on board, or when the lights go out, it's night-night, right? So, and we found out who did. Ukraine didn't, Yemen didn't, Venezuela didn't, Iran didn't. All right. And we found out who did. And we can name those for days. But the voting systems, something as simple as the swing states. The swing states in the United States, that is that hierarchy that they made. That's how they knew, kind of like the NFL scripted. That's how they knew these states would come down to the battleground states before the election. How did they know that? See, that's something that simple through the years that they pulled over everybody. But to show that this is also a scripted operation and it's been well planned out, the voting systems, Executive Order 13848 with the national emergency that was declared September the 12th, 2018. All right, quote unquote, Joe continued that all throughout 21 to 25, just to hand right back to President Trump, January the 20th, 2025. Why would Joe Biden continue an executive order with a national emergency for election interference? And also, every one of our military guys here can attest to this. Military orders with the congressional authorization are not continuation orders, because when a president does that, it does require that 90-day window in a congressional authorization. The National Guard have been active cybersecurity teams for the 2018 election, 2020 election, 2022 election, and 2024 elections. Knowing that they're not continuation, but let's just be hypothetical for a moment, and let's just say that they ignored that. Then why would Joe Biden have the National Guard cybersecurity teams collecting real data and real voting time? Because that's what the cybersecurity teams do. They're getting the real data and the real numbers, and they're also finding who's trying to hack, who's trying to add, who's trying to delete. Why would they do that? So that's all validated. And no other time have we used the National Guard for that in our history. And then something that alludes to it in the hierarchy. When they had Joe Biden on the debate with President Trump, he kept talking about Ukraine and he kept talking about NATO and Article 5 of NATO. Ukraine's not a member of NATO. Why would he be talking about Ukraine and NATO and Article 5? Article 5, ladies and gentlemen, is where an attack on one is an attack on all. All right. Well, Ukraine's not a member of NATO. He also mentioned Belarus. They're not a member of NATO. So see, they're making all these people expose, who was tied in, who wasn't. But at the end of the day, also people forget that there are good people in every nation. People forget that, especially Americans. Americans are very, I don't know. I don't know if it's closed-minded or just not educated on that. But so many people forget there's good people in Ukraine. There's good people in Venezuela. Everybody wants to be in vocal power, have a voice, and that's what we're doing is opening that. And all President Trump had to do, in a simple, was enforce the laws. And when you enforce the laws as prescribed to the full extent, then it exposes everything else. And as Lieutenant Colonel Lennox said, the ones who are crowing the loudest are the ones who are being exposed. And all President Trump is doing is just, oh, you gave me this button and you kept it in law, so we're going to utilize this law.
Excellent. Thank you. Let's move into the global defense war aspect of this off of the Venezuela turf. Seems to me the night of the Venezuela operation that the enemies in darkness across the world, when they woke up the next morning, they were having more than a bad hair day. They've been basically put on notice. And so this very panel has often referred to President Trump as the Supreme Commander-in-Chief of the Global Defense Allied Forces. We'll take this at the top with Lieutenant Colonel Ricardo Bossi. Please elaborate on what that means. Commander-in-Chief of the Supreme Commander-in-Chief of the Global Defense Allied Forces. What is meant by that? I think we see that beginning to play out. And we'll be a little bit brief on this second segment of questioning because I got to take on 4 countries here. But let's start there, Ricardo, if you will, please. What is meant for the purpose of my understanding and our viewers? President Trump is the Supreme Commander-in-Chief of the Global Defense Allied Forces, and how that differs from a dictator. No audio, sir. You've muted your mic. You got to unmute your mic, sir.
There you go.
Thank you.
Sorry about that. That's a great question, John, and one everybody should understand. This is, and it has been an in extremis situation for the world. It wasn't a matter of simply let's vote new people in, because as we now know, there has never been a free and fair election on the planet for the longest possible time. So this was a choice between life and death. And in that situation, what happened was, as we know, the military leaders of the US decided something had to be done. They couldn't. The proposal was that they should potentially conduct a military coup, throw out the crooks, and then hand the reins of power back to the people. But that was never going to work. It would create a wound that would never heal, and it wouldn't work anyway because the people wouldn't believe it, and they just re-elect the same people. So what happened was this plan was hatched, and then progressively over time, and this is one of the key responsibilities of leadership, is to build alliances. And so they met with and worked with personnel in every country around the world, bit by bit, trying to determine who, if anybody, in this country is clean, is capable, and ready and willing to do the job that has to be done. And so over a long period of time, they recruited individuals, military, civilian, politicians, lawyers, media, you name it, unions, academia, every group. They recruited people they needed to recruit that might do the job. Now, they were few and far between. The militaries were okay because below the leadership level of the militaries, most of the lads and the ladies were straight shooters. They just wanted to do the right thing. So they could recruit military people within the organization. And let's just talk military, push the others off to one side. And so over many, 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 many years, they vetted they checked everything on individuals to see who was trustworthy and who could do the job, because they were keen to have the people of their own nation clean up their nation as far as possible, if that makes sense, in conjunction with other allies. And so this alliance was established, this military alliance involving the militaries of just about every country on the planet. And the plan was developed, and they needed a leader, lawfully elected, constitutionally elected, to lead this alliance, because otherwise it's just a military coup d'etat. And so constitutional legitimacy had to be established. Now, this explains why it took so much time for the corporation issue to roll itself out. Because if the planet was a collection of sovereign nations, then it would be fair to say, well, this is just a dictatorship. What right does Donald J. Trump have to step into my country, send his people into my country, and do something about it? Well, the White Hats don't miss a trick. The corporations were corporations, and corporations can be bankrupted, corporations can be taken over, and legitimate control, according to the cabal set of rules, was acquired. And so it's not like DJT and this military has stepped on the toes of sovereign nations. DJT and his troops, this global alliance, have been playing the cabal with their own rules, taken over their organizations and established themselves, just as the cabal established themselves over the original legitimate United States. When it became the corporation, corporations were taken over. The corporations were taken over like any corporation can be taken over. And then legitimate control, according to a set of rules, not necessarily a moral set of rules, but a set of rules, could be played. And then when they had the plan in place, they had the troops and the allies in place and a legitimate commander in place, the plan could be executed. And that's the short version about what this alliance is and why it's legitimate and why Donald J. Trump is actually, simply said, the most powerful man on the planet ever.
What brilliant analysis. Thank you, sir. In the interest of time, and what do we have? About 200 countries on this planet. Big job ahead of us. The interest of our time, I'm going to just pluck a few countries out and just have you briefly comment on what you may see happening or now or about to happen. Let's start, and again, we'll be brief. We'll take this around the panel. Cuba, Canada, Iran, Europe, and Greenland. I see a lot of things going on here. Can you just take one at a time and provide any commentary you can, Lieutenant Colonel Bosey, on Cuba, Canada, Iran, Europe, and Greenland? What's happening? What's about to happen?
Yeah, sure. Cuba is closely aligned with Venezuela, closely aligned with the cabal. It was a means by which Castro was no great leader. We know that. He was just a puppet like everybody else, but they needed geographic locations for events to be taking place. Cuba will see the leadership dissolved, and again, an opportunity for free and fair elections for the Cuban people. Again, this plan is being rolled out. Canada next, you'll be rolled up real quick. Sorry, to my Canuck friends. You'll be rolled up quick, smart, because you are as great a threat to, well, maybe not as great, but as a great threat to the stability of the United States, just like Venezuela was. The line that the drugs and the corruption comes from the northern border almost as much as the southern border is true. So once again, you're going to be wrapped up as well. But again, probably wrapped up in the US potentially. Like it, lump it. You might get a chance to remain independent. I strongly don't think that'll occur. Let's jump to Iran. Iran was a genuine threat for many, many years. It's now been retaken, and it will lose its corrupted leadership. And once again, the people will have a chance to reestablish their own sovereignty there. So the funding to the terrorist global organizations will disappear, and stability will return to the Middle East. There'll still be existential kind of conflicts between the Shia and the Sunni, but that's a local issue for them to sort out. And as we've said previously, and DJT has intimated, it's for the Muslims to sort out the Islamic world, not anybody else. So that now what became a global threat now is simply a localized threat, but there'll be massive pressure to make sure that that is resolved. And I think the last one was Greenland, John. Greenland, potentially again certainly part of the Western Hemisphere, always DJT's intention. Whether it becomes part of the greater United States or not, I don't know. It would make a lot of sense from a strategic perspective to wrap it up as closely and as tightly as they can. They might, like Canada, they might have an independent government of some sort, but closely under the umbrella of the United States. So you've got this Western Hemisphere stitched up very, very tightly.
Thank you, sir. Europe, just a brief comment on Europe. The president recently has stated
Oh, yeah.
to Europe
Yep.
that you're losing your heritage. What are you doing?
Correct.
What's your take on Europe? It's a big piece here.
The EU will be taken down. Individual nations will once again be able to fly their national flags. The EU flag will be hopefully burnt, and they will have a chance then to start re-establishing themselves. Now, once again, according to the National Security Strategy, if you read it, he has a plan for Europe in the sense that he wants Europe to become European again, which means, to my mind, the nation states will be free to export the imported unwanted immigrants from Africa and elsewhere back to their home countries. So they'll be now free because I can tell you the Italians want the vous comprez. They call them vous comprez, which is sort of bad Italian. Do you want to buy? Do you want to buy? Because these people turn up and they sell stuff on the streets. Each nation wants these people out. They want to become Italian again. The French want to be France again. The Spanish want Spain to be Spanish again. They all want them gone. They want Europe to be European, and this is one of Trump's key pushes to make sure that occurs, because it's in nobody's interest to have an Islamic caliphate across Europe, and it is everyone's interest for them to then start to re-establish their national sovereignty, their national character, and begin to reform that vibrant culture of Europe that has been smashed over the last 20, 25 years.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir. And, I lived in South Florida many years ago. Calioche, I can tell you our Cuban friends are going to be celebrating at some point in the near future like we've never seen before in Miami. Let's turn that once beautiful island back into a beautiful island. Let's reestablish trade. Let's bring the families back together, and let's turn that into a casino-driven, wonderful tourist destination and prosper beyond belief, and take the yoke of tyranny off the Cuban people's necks for the first time in 60, 70 years, however it's been since Castro. And I also find it interesting. What's the guy's name? Che Guevara. I'm in Asia, and there's like Che Guevara T-shirts and posters, although I don't even know who the hell this guy is. I mean, he killed artists and gays for sport, but yet he's a hero to these people. Yeah. I don't understand it, but that's a quick, useless commentary. Michael Jaco, let's take Lieutenant Colonel Lennox, let's take this on. In the interest of time, can you comment or contribute to Cuba, Canada, Iran, Europe, Greenland, anything else you'd like to add, your perspective on what Lieutenant Colonel Bosey shared with us?
Canada is, according to the pre-Constitution articles of, Derek, you're going to help me.
Federation.
Articles. The Articles
of Confederation. Yeah.
Articles of Confederation. Under those, Canada is a part of the United States. And there are at least 4 provinces that have already begun the voting process to become part of the United States. So Canada is going to be part of the U.S. There's little doubt in my mind that that's going to not going to happen. Only place they might have trouble with is Quebec, because they want to be part of France. Head of the government in Greenland and Denmark said the United Nations will come and keep the U.S. from taking over Greenland. There is no NATO. The United Nations is going to be gone. Greenland will be part of the U.S. in some form or another. We already have large bases there. In fact, a lot of the trafficked children are going up there for medical treatment. Cuba, if they could go back to being the resort that they were in the 50s, it'd be phenomenal. And I think that'll happen because they've never been able to get rid of Gitmo on there. Um, Iran's very interesting because it's Persia, and Persia is very different from the rest of the Middle East. They are cleaning up. I know a lot of Iranians I've met here in the DC area who left there, uh, and the CIA has been controlling Iran for years. That's going to go away. The Russians are in there already doing that. Europe is very interesting because under Nasser Gassara, in order to get the money that you're supposed to get because of your birth certificate, you have to be back in your home country. That makes it very interesting for Europe and all of the people that have gone there running away from their home countries to come to Britain and Germany. And the challenge for Germany is they've always had a very large population of people from Italy. I can't remember the other one. Some of the Turkey, who worked for the military in Berlin, worked for the military all over Europe. That's a very interesting challenge they have because they were never citizens. They were guest workers. And Germany has always had a lot of guest workers. France, I don't know about France. It's France. There's nothing, since de Gaulle left, there's been nothing. And the rest of Europe, Italy is good. Probably one of the staunchest supporters of Trump, interestingly enough. Spain's where all the Brits go to live instead of living in Britain, in Great Britain. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to watch Europe once the EU flag comes down, and it's coming down because that idiot that's running it he's crazier than a loon.
Well, thank you. Great perspectives. Great views on Europe. Thank you, sir. Michael Jaco, Cuba, Canada, Iran, Europe, Greenland. Anything you want to contribute? The world is changing, folks. This is a global defense, strategic, precision military operation, as our panel has been educating us on for the last year, and we're watching it unfold. Michael, weigh in if you will, please.
Yeah, this is a beautiful time because this is something we've talked about for years, how there's the militaries around the world were working in unison to basically take down the New World Order, as George H.W. Bush talked about many years ago. It is gone. It has collapsed, and it's collapsing very fast. So you look at Cuba, like I talked about, the people are already starting to celebrate. They know they're going to be replacing their government. I think we're going to start to see that probably in Colombia, Venezuela. Now, we haven't talked about Brazil, because I think Brazil is going to have a change of leadership as well, but that's coming. That'll probably be revealed pretty soon. Lula, I think, he's not going to last much longer. Bolsonaro will be pulled out of prison, and he'll assume his rightful place as a leader again. So you look at Canada. Just think of all the places that are going to celebrate when they're free, when America comes in and frees them. That's Canada. Canadians, I do shows all the time, and Canadians are constantly, please come and save us from this, this corrupt government that we have here. So that's coming. You look at Greenland. Greenland is full of natural resources. They've already also expressed the interest of becoming part of the United States. Iran. When I was in the Middle East, it was always the Iranians that were causing problems. So that's going to be a massive win for all of the Middle East. The fall of the Islamists all around the world as well, because this is being exposed as well. So in Iran, they have the fastest growing Christian network of anywhere in the world. So they're, turning around, a long history of suppression, and it's going to be something also, freedom of religion and so forth. is coming for the Middle East as well. So all of these different countries, European Union is dead. NATO is dead. It's a dead man walking. It's definitely going to go away. Now, one thing also we haven't talked about is the City of London. So the City of London has been funding a lot of the mischief around the world. They fund China, they fund Ukraine, of course, and a lot of problems. So the City of London, it's like, who's the enemy? We should be like invading the City of London. But of course, we'll squeeze them, we'll take away their money, and they'll collapse. So this is it's like we've been talking about for years. It's the time has finally come, and it's progressing very rapidly. Take down the old New World Order. It's done. It's gone.
You bet. It is a great time to celebrate. I realize our nation's not completely out of the woods yet. We'll address that at another broadcast. The near-death experience Juan speaks about, perhaps yet to hit the streets, as well as the near-death experience for the dollar. We're going to close out our show with a new topic in a moment on the silver issue, back to London, where a lot of that's taken place. And but before we do, we'll have Derek please weigh in on the countries, Cuba, Canada, Iran, Europe, Greenland, anywhere you'd like to go to contribute to that before we take on the silver issue and wrap up the broadcast.
I'll comment briefly on that, but if I may, I want to tackle the Supreme Commander, because I was licking my chops on that. If you'll let me, to help
Bring
people
it
out,
on.
I think I could add to that. That's my wheelhouse there. But what I was saying
Yes, it
earlier
is.
about all these nations, they kind of all add into the Indo-Pacific, even though that's a certain region, but it's the same concept that President Trump has in that agreement in 2019, where every nation will be sovereign on their own. Well, in order to reach that, it's got to do what Jaco just said. The old power, the old, hierarchy, everything, that's got to be gone. So that's what that's alluding to. That's alluding to a new world, not order, but every nation sovereign on their own, meaning the people's in charge. The people. That's what President Trump said January 2017. We're taking the power out of D.C., giving it back to you, the people. That's applied and made applicable to all these nations. And that's why the capitulations are very key. And it kind of ties into the Supreme Commander thing, because he's that head. All right. And the generals and the admirals, they're the real men and women in charge back here. And that's the one thing that my grandfathers and great uncles really, drove into me, instilled into me growing up. And my certain uncles were on another side of the family that didn't know my grandfather. And they talked about the generals. Said, never again will we let happen in this country what happened under JFK. If we get a chance, we're going to take it over. And Lieutenant Colonel Bosey made a key term there to make sure people know it's a slight difference. Now, liberals and Democrats think what's taking place, if they do know about a military operation, they call it a coup d'etat. It's not. It's not, because the law shows that. Now, they're the very ones like Tim Kaine and all these other people talking about all the laws and orders, and they can't even quote one single word from one single sentence from one single paragraph of a single law, much less put them all together. But the generals and admirals wanted someone who wasn't military, but also wasn't in politics, because that's part of bringing in a new world, a new light, a new everything. All right, and that's what President Trump offers. But he also was an expert in many fields, and he's genius in a lot of other ways as well. And the corporations that we're talking about. And that's like Lieutenant Colonel Bosey said, hey, well, you screwed up. You guys messed up. A corporation can be run like a business, but it also can be what? Bankrupt like one too, because that's how you guys designed it. So we're just taking your corporations and going, well, we don't like your corporations, and it doesn't back our Constitution. It doesn't back our Declaration. It doesn't back our founding. See, there's one thing I never hear a Democrat mention. They never mention the Declaration of Independence. They never even talk about it. I've never heard one single Democrat or liberal say the phrase Declaration of Independence, because they know nothing about it. And they also don't understand our spirit. And that's what all these nations know. The American spirit is there. And they know also other nations' militaries that want to fight for everyone's freedoms. It's that spirit. And that's what everybody wants to be a part of. But one of the key things that people get wrong with a supreme commander, but a president more specifically, is the presidential power. The Constitution is one of the worst things that people use as their shield or as their, source. They'll say, "Oh, the Congress has the power to declare the war." Yes, that's true, but the president also is simultaneous in there because you got to know our foundation. Our foundation and who wrote the Constitution. They specifically came out of a war that established a military first. All right. So in our unconventional warfare, in our publications, it specifically says in unconventional warfare that the military can operate without the United States government's consent under a what? A presidential finding. All right. So many people don't realize that presidential power and they don't read all the things they're supposed to read with that. And then also the Dwight D. Eisenhower. I always hate because I feel like I'm being disrespectful. That's the last time I'll call him by that. But General Eisenhower, first, rare 5-star general. All right. 5-star general and president. He's the one who established the continuity government. And with the continuity government, there was something that accompanied it. It was called a Presidential Emergency Action Document. It's short, the acronym is PEADS. All right, there's 4 ways the military pairs with the federal government. That is national emergencies, executive orders, proclamations, and treaties. All right, so everything that President Trump did from 2017 to 2021 was set up all those unique executive orders with all these national emergencies. And then you got to go back to what Congress did in 73, where they actually, when they tried to limit the power of the president, all President Trump has done is take all their limitations and use it against them. And once all is unveiled to the people, everything we're talking about from the financial systems around the world, we're talking about all these nations that we're talking about, and the power gets back to the people, and people start seeing every aspect of their lives, the chains unshackled off of them, then that exposure alone is not, it's going to allow people to see, I don't want to go back to this. I don't want to go back to that world. I want to stay right here. And then everything goes back to preventing this from happening again in the future.
Yes, thank you, Derek. And you brought us back to the Supreme Commander in Chief, this President Trump. My contribution to that also is he was chosen, in my opinion, by the ultimate supreme being, God above. Then through the admirals and generals, the 200 is the number we've been floated around that sat down with Donald Trump, the citizen, some years prior to the escalator, and continued on that trajectory. And then, of course, we the people put him in office 3 times. And so while it is an operation with so many incredible men and women throughout this world and our great military and intelligence folks, never underestimate what one man can do. And that one man, the face of this whole thing, this operation, is our Commander-in-Chief and President Donald J. Trump, that I've never once wavered from for 1 second in this entire journey. And I wish that those target audience will glean a lot of value from these minds on this panel. That leads us to the central bank. We're talking about great things happening. Michael is Jaco has permeated a narrative throughout this, what a great time this is, and he is absolutely right. And you got to put the central bank debacle in there. The London Exchange and the central bank has controlled and manipulated the gold and silver market for decades, Federal Reserve, et cetera, et cetera. This is now coming to an end as we speak. With the massive demand globally for silver, the vaults in London empty, the central bank is squirming and panicking behind the scenes, now imploding upon itself as their paper contracts and naked short selling manipulation has caught them finally on the wrong side of the trade. Last I checked, they've gone to the Fed window as a lender of last resorts, borrowing over $50 billion to keep their doors open with no end in sight, as I understand the mechanics behind the scenes. So silver is catapulting, and for sound reason. This morning, I'm in Thailand recording this in the morning. You gentlemen are at night. This morning, the silver closed at over $82 an ounce. Silver is catapulting, and for sound reason. And so is gold, for that matter. So there's the setup. One could say that President Trump's legacy, in part, could be three things. One, restoring election integrity here at home, then exported throughout the 71 other countries that had their elections stolen. Two, rescuing and rehabilitating the children, ensuring that this never happens again and holding those accountable. And number three, restoring sound money. President Trump said, I've said this before, I'll say it again, in 2017 inauguration, I'm giving you back your country, with that military statement behind him. I'm returning the power back to you, the people. And you know what? He can't do that with unconstitutional, funny fed money as debt. So we are restoring sound constitutional money back into the treasury, of which we vote into office. So there's a lot to unpack there. This is our last topic of the panel. So we'll begin with Ricardo, Lieutenant Ricardo Bossi, Lieutenant Colonel Ricardo Bossi. Sorry, there's a lot to unpack here on the central bank and silver situation. So begin any way you choose. What do you see happening on the dismantling of the central bank system?
This is welcome news. As you and I have spoken before, John, I'm not surprised it's happening. I'm just surprised it took so long. I'm not
Decades.
laughing at other people's pain. This is exactly what we've been waiting for. We know that this is going to occur. I'll keep my bit short so others can chime in. But I'll tell you what I know. We were told 6, 7, 8 years ago that silver would reach parity with gold and then exceed the value of gold by a factor of 3 to 4. How do we know that? If you study history, you see these things. You know what's coming next. And as evidence of the value of silver potentially exceeding that of gold as being not spectacular news is simply because years ago in the US specifically, let's focus on that, silver was valued more than gold. And that's reflected in the badges of rank of the US military. A gold cloverleaf is the rank insignia of a major who is subordinate to a lieutenant colonel, the signia of which is a silver cloverleaf. So the fact that silver exceeds the value of gold shouldn't surprise anybody, because that reflected real market value. As we know, silver's been one of the most depressed metals on the market, and there's just reasons for that. For example, you can't have flat screen TVs, and you can't have AI computer farms to manage that without lots of silver. You can't build a Tesla without a kilo of silver. But silver has industrial demand. Silver holds its value. What's happening now is it's going through the roof. We knew it was going to happen. The holders of silver metal are hanging onto it. So the COMEX, the institution that trades silver, has less to trade. China has, as of this, January 1, said that no more silver is coming out of our country, and they're processing 80% of the world's silver. The parasitic manipulators of the system, who play this game for their benefit to the cost of the people, are now brought out. It will take off like a rocket. I don't think people are saying, the experts that understand the normal rules of metals trading. It's almost amusing watching them, because it's watching somebody with a hammer look for nails. They're no longer looking at nails. There are screws, and the hammers just don't work anymore. They're going to say, "Oh, it'll reach $200." Well, it will, and then $3, and then $5, and then $6, then $1,000 an ounce. It'll take off like a rocket. It'll become unobtainium, which is an expression I think other people use, meaning the price will just be ridiculously high. It's gone up and down. It's shot up to. It's not at its highest ever value. If you factor in inflation, it's still well below that. Even at $80 US an ounce, it's still below its highest ever price. When it does break that price, adjusted for inflation, it'll really start to fly. And if people are thinking, I can't afford silver at $80 US an ounce, wait till it's 160, wait till it's 360, wait till it's 500. This is an opportunity, and I'm sure the White Hats are very happy that there's this temporary lull to allow as many people to get into silver as much as possible, as quickly as you can, get the metals. We know that the silver certificates outnumber the physical metal I think by a ratio of almost 100 to 1. For every 1 ounce of gold, there's 100 ounces of silver certificates out there. So somebody's going to lose. The banks are exiting their positions. That's what you're facing. So I'll just leave it there. There's not a lot more to say, so I'll let others. I'll leave enough meat on the bone for the others to chew on that.
Great, thank you, sir. And you raised a very important point that I'd like to comment on briefly, and that's adjusted for inflation. That is so key to factor into this. And on the note of inflation, and I'm a layman here, but I think it's well founded. Inflation is a tool that's been used by the Federal Reserve. What they've basically done is they've increased and decreased the money supply and raised and lowered interest rates for the benefit of themselves to fund both sides of the wars and everything else they do at the detriment of we, the hardworking American people and the people of the world. That's what they've been doing, and that is what's coming to an end. And it couldn't come anytime sooner. I believe outside of normal, and this is above my pay grade, economists would know better, but normal inflation that's healthy as economies move, ebb and flow, and grow the laws of economics is good. But out of control inflation to manipulate and control our currency's value and to disrupt our lives, taxes and inflation, that's been created by design, and that's coming to an end. You talk about tyranny, boots coming off our neck, folks. There it is right there. And there's so much more. And we unpack a lot of this on a global financial reset show live every Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. I'm happy to announce that Lieutenant Colonel Tom Lennox will be joining us not this week, but the week after. And we're going to try and get Brad Wosley to join in the same episode because I know he's got a lot of value in this area as well. We were unable to bring him into this panel today. Sorely missed, but we'll bring him in next week on that. Anyway, we'll close out. We'll take it to Lieutenant Colonel Tom Lennox. So we're talking about the end of the central bank system, the Federal Reserve as we know it. The corner there got themselves now backed into, and the explosion of silver. What say you, sir?
Yeah, you can get really technical on this. 3 years ago, I put all my money in silver. So that's been very interesting to watch. The key on silver is there are 800 million tons dug a year. 60% of that goes to industrial operations. The banks had enough paper silver out there that if they could buy all the silver they needed, it would take 5.5 years, assuming they could get 100% of the mined silver in a year. Not doable. There was a guy the other day, an industrialist, who offered $200 an ounce for all the silver he could buy. He got no sellers. The only sellers would be the banks that had all the paper that they'd issued saying they had silver. Morgan Stanley, or JP Morgan, went $4.1 billion in the hole on silver paper they'd issued. That happened 2 days ago. Bank of America won $1 billion in the hole. Chase Manhattan went who knows how many $1 billion in the hole. They're all in the hole. This is part of the come down of the banks. At least one big bank is gone as of last Friday, because last Friday was when the big the margin calls were made by the COMEX. And they don't make margin calls very often, but they made on Friday $17 billion in in margin calls. So when we look at silver, I agree that it's going up over $1,000. I think it'll be $1,500 to $2,000 an ounce. But we have to look at it in terms of the money that replaces the fiat currency. So when we look at that, the value is going to be unbelievable because we'll be talking about a gold backed currency that we're going to be buying the silver with. It's fascinating, absolutely fascinating.
You bet.
That's my
Well, I can't wait.
on silver.
Thank you, sir. I can't wait for you to join as the featured guest on the Global Financial Reset Show coming up, where we have a lot more time to delve into that, the repatriation of the wealth, the return of the wealth, stolen wealth to the people, the eventual elimination of the federal income tax, our reestablishing of our currency into a stable coin, into a QFS, into a Space Force encrypted wallet. And that's, in my opinion, where God and technology finally say hello to each other. But we'll get into that at another time. Thank you, sir. Michael Jaco, if you want to weigh in on this, I know you've been very vocal about this on some of your broadcasts that I tune into on occasion. What's your take on the central bank collapse that's beginning and the silver explosion?
Yeah, it's just fantastic. I've been collecting silver since I was a little boy, 8, 9 years old. So I've watched the silver go up and down. We're in a mega cycle right now. We'll see another 8 years of silver going up. So we're in the beginning stages of this bull cycle in silver. This month alone, we'll see probably over $100 an ounce. So it'll continue to go up. I agree. We're going to see $1,000+ silver easily. And probably a lot higher. I agree with Lieutenant Colonel Wosi that it's going to, probably equal or surpass gold at some point. Going all the way back to the Wizard of Oz, 1896, Frank Baum talked about, this in his books. He did several books, I think 12 books in all. The Dorothy's slippers were silver to begin with. And then they turned them to ruby. But the gold, follow the yellow brick road was gold. It was obviously led to falsehood with the Wizard of Oz. And the silver slippers basically were the ones that really got her back. So it's a very interesting take. Another interesting take is JFK was big into silver. He did silver certificates. The Federal Reserve did not like that at all. In fact, shortly after his death, they forced bought all of them back instantly. Right. So I remember as a little boy, having silver certificates, but they were worthless, pretty much. They're just, for, collectors. And so now we're seeing President Trump, who put his name on the JFK Center in Washington, D.C., above JFK's name. So that's basically another indicator that he is going back to the silver standard as well. And again, taking down the Federal Reserve. So we'll see the miners really start to kick in, I think, once we hit $100, but $150, when we see that, that's when the silver miners and so forth are really going to start to kick. So another great investment opportunity in the silver miners if you're want to diversify your portfolio, because I think at some point we're going to see silver become unobtainium. You won't be able to get it. There's a lot of silver dealers, I follow them quite a bit and have for years, that are running out of silver constantly in their shops. So it'll soon be unavailable to the average investor. So I'd recommend at this point, get as much as you can, because the industrialists really need this silver bad. They're coming out with new batteries and so forth that need a lot more silver. Solar panels, rockets, you name it, medical supply, everything is using silver. It's not just just for monetary means at this point. It's also industrialized massively on a level we've never seen before in history. So yeah, silver is definitely going to go up. Silver will be the collapse of the Federal Reserve. And then, of course, the IRS will go away as well. IRS, President Trump is already talking about how tariffs are going to do away with IRS. and he cut a lot of the IRS funds January 1st. No tips, no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, and no tax on Social Security. So it's coming. It's not like you talked about in the beginning of the show, John. It can't all happen at once. It's got to be a slow squeeze, and that's what's happening right now.
Thank you, Michael. I was going to ask you some pointed questions, but you've addressed it all there in your closing points. Thank you very much. Extraordinary time to be alive, folks. Sure, there's plenty of doom and gloom. A lot of folks are just trying to buy lunch tomorrow. I understand that. But hang in there. Help is on the way. You can clearly see that. And God is on the throne, as always, and in control. And he's got his people in place. And some of those people are on this screen right now. Derek Johnson, please close us out. Your comments on the central bank debacle, the silver explosion, and so forth.
I mean, what better person than the Donald Trump that I grew up watching, the businessman, right? You can go back to talking about a long time coming. You can go back to a John Wayne movie. I think it was in 1939, Stagecoach. And they're on the stagecoach, and there's a man in there, and he's big old mustache and, business suit, looking all debonair, all this stuff. And John's laying in the floorboard, whatnot, being all cowboy, whatnot. But, and the guy goes, what this nation needs is a businessman for president. I mean, this was like 1939 again. And there's one of our, American legends, John Wayne. And then you had James Stewart, legendary James Stewart, that my dad got to pick up in the Air Force on the tarmac at Fort Walton Beach at Eglin Air Force Base, which was one of the highlights of his life, but also in the Air Force. But legendary James Stewart, Jimmy Stewart, whatever you want to call him, he went by both. But he was trying to tell people in his movie, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, what was going on in D.C. all those years, and alluding to it and a timestamp in a movie. So this goes back to what Jacob was talking about too, about the London, the Crown, right? The Crown. We have all these tie-ins, the central bank, and then what President Trump was showing you. I mean, there's so many ways you can slice this pie, but just my favorite was January the 20th, 2021, when the whole world thought that Joe Biden was being inaugurated. They showed it was a funeral. But that was not just a funeral it wasn't a funeral for Joe. It was a funeral for the crown, right? This is all being taken down. The 2017 to 2021 was your resetting of the legislative branch. Your 21 to 25 was a resetting of the executive branch. And right now we're currently going through the resetting of the judicial branch. And our founders put those in a sequence on purpose. The first two are voted in by us. And then the judicial is nominated by the president, confirmed by the Senate. And when they're not doing what we, the people, put our people in place for, then they're to be removed. By whom? The president and the Congress. They're to be impeached. So how does that all tie into the monetary system? President Trump's been hammering this so much. The very first thing he said straight out the gate was follow the money. Follow the money, follow the money, follow the money. And we know that a lot of cryptos and those things at first were put into place as tracers as well. And then we also know about the gold, all these things through the years, like Indiana Jones and the Nicolas Cage movies. People thought these were just movies, but everything has been alluding to what's taking place right now. And it's like a collaboration of movies that all come to one movie. But President Trump tells people through his speeches, which are proclamations, and they're timestamped, but they're proclamations, and they'll be added up in my book, and then it'll be added up in whatever they're doing for the finale for their side. But when he was saying specifically, he said from the 1870s to 1913, our nation had more money than it knew what to do with. Well, that is why that is why I specifically sound like a broken record week in, week out on the same topics, but the same delivery, is because it goes back to his comment in 2020. The cure can't be bigger than the problem. The solution cannot be bigger than the problem. I remember one of our panels one night when a question was asked, and Lieutenant Colonel Lennox answered it in like maybe one sentence. Then Lieutenant Colonel Bosey said, anybody who cannot answer it that quickly and that short, it don't deserve an answer, right? Because some of this stuff is that simple, right? It's who's in charge, who's in command, and are they enforcing what the law reads and what's prescribed in the law? And that's what's taking place. So, as we've all alluded to here, there's the actual side of the actual buying silver, or if you want to buy gold, but silver is the ticket. But there's the actual portion of that. But then there's the operational side of it here and what was going on with the hierarchy and what happened. Ulysses S. Grant, the swamp that was starting thought he would make a great president because he got General Lee to surrender and all this other stuff. That's when the puppeteering really started. You had the Organic Act, 1871. They tore it up in 1874, and then they put another one in 1878, and then the rest is history. It started rolling from there. We borrowed money from Britain, and we just kept growing more and more in debt, right? But the money was being made, but where was the money going, right? It was going into the hands of all these people at that time period, the people that John Wayne in the movie was alluding to, and James Stewart. So all this stuff just snowballed. And then you get into 1941. I highly recommend, we were on a D-Day panel, Lieutenant Colonel Bosey and Colonel Sellers. They open up on World War II. Very, very detailed. That's it. What did they know? What did Churchill know? What did Roosevelt know? Look at all the New Deals. Even President Trump took a shot at Roosevelt with the New Deals. See, they got all of it would be my grandparents and a lot of the people listening, your parents. They got our parents and grandparents to buy into these deals, right? And these different organizations. And everybody started putting their money in it. But what started happening? That swamp started taking up here. Same thing with the Bidens, the hedge funds, as they call them. They were hiding all their money in these hedge funds. To an average business person, it looked like a real hedge fund. But what were they doing back here? They were siphoning all this money up here. Same thing with Ukraine, Venezuela, all the different things. So all this ties into that central bank and the people that were running those. So what better person than President Donald John Trump, who longer than I've been alive has been saying the same thing about China consistently all these years, right? That is someone who not only knows it, but Jerry Lee Lewis, famous piano player and singer, they asked him, hey, can you play that thing standing up? He said, I can play this thing in my sleep. All right, President Trump knows business like the back of his eyelids. All right, he is the key person for that. He was the perfect person for that. So it's one of those, when you're so rich already and you have everything money can buy, you have everything that your great grandchildren will, can never spend. I'll never forget sitting, and I think it's safe to say now that I got to sit with Barron Trump one of the times that I was at Mar-a-Lago. It was only his second appearance of the year back in 2024. And I don't think he made another appearance, but I'll never forget one thing he said. And I was like, oh my God, you talking about feeling guilty? Because I can tell you right now, I have in this little white thing you see him right here is a shoebox. And I have a lot of shoes. And Barron Trump said, yeah, Dad will only let me have one pair of shoes, right? One pair of tennis shoes. All right, one pair now. So that's how they keep their wealth going. It's a mindset. It's a lifestyle. His great grandchildren will never be able to spend his money. But it's kind of like that saying at Christmas, what do you buy someone that has everything? You can't, right? Most people who have more money than they know what to do with, they prefer friendships. They prefer companion. They prefer conversation. They prefer food and fellowship, right? So President Trump, what better person who has all the money in the world, could fly anywhere he wanted to in the world, do anything he wanted anytime, any day, and his great grandchildren will never spend all this money, to go into a system and say, not only do I know how to wreck it, but I know how to give it back to the people and also provide wealth to our people for future generations. We're not going to lose companies. We're not going to lose organizations, but we're going to have systems that work for everybody. We're going to have checks and balances from top to bottom. And a lot of the swamp did exactly what companies started doing in the 90s. My dad was a product of that, where they got rid of the straight line management and went to a team concept. Well, that team concept is one of those things we were talking about earlier with Tim Kaine, when you verbalize something too much, just because it says team concept doesn't mean that it's going to be a good thing. If you're a team, you act like a team. You don't have to verbalize that. All right. So the straight line management is where you had managers, middle managers, all the way down. This whole team concept made a top level management straight to employees. All right. And they cut out all the middle level management. That is what the swamp did to people. That's what they did. They had this hierarchy up here in their central banks, and they used all the key words, the chaos and division, though. They used all the key verbiage. They used the terms laws and orders, and they quoted certain things. But what were they doing back here? It's the same thing that you were talking about, John, about the inflation and deflation. All right. In 1971, the Nixon shock, right? The Congress made the dollar as valuable as one they wanted it and invaluable. And that's when the inflation deflation started playing with people's money. But then what would they do? They would add a tax somewhere, right? And then tax for a tax for a tax for a tax. And then they kept printing money, and then taxing people for it, right? And it just snowballed. And so a lot of it was going to happen anyway. But if it weren't for President Trump and this operation, everyone here knows what happens with a nation when a dictator does what starves their people. It's not pretty at all. So thank God that we didn't get to that place in history where the people took to the streets in desperation, and there was a plan for that.
Great perspectives, and I like how you brought in some of our classic old Hollywood productions and films before Hollywood became what we see today, and that's being dismantled too. Thank goodness for that. And Gerald Celente is an economist out of upstate New York. He's known to have said this for a couple of decades. He says, when people lose everything and they have nothing left to lose, they lose it. And thank goodness we haven't arrived there by and large. And not only are we not arriving there, we're going the complete opposite end of that spectrum. And we'll talk about that in the Global Financial Reset Show on Wednesday. I want to thank this panel, first and foremost, for your time, taking away from your family and your personal life this evening, and providing this incredible value from the decades of experience you have in military and combat intelligence and so forth. Extremely valuable. I look very much forward to meeting with you folks every month for the duration of this year. And to our audience, visit jmcbroadcasting.com. Up on the navigation bar, second tab, contributors. And when you click on that, you will see this panel and some other contributors to my network, their biographies, links to their platforms. Absolutely go visit that and follow them if you aren't already following them. I want to thank you and salute you, gentlemen. Have an amazing year, and look forward to speaking with you next month, because the landscape would have changed significantly. Thank you all very much. I'll be right back after this important announcement about Eyes on Gitmo.
Join Juan O'Savin, retired Lieutenant Colonel Matt Meck, retired Brigadier General Blaine Holt, and other prominent military and intelligence guests for an ongoing monthly broadcast with John Michael Chambers as your host here on jmcbroadcasting.com. The premiere episode launches Friday, September 26, 2025, and is sponsored by Genesis Gold. Visit jmcgenesismetals.com. This panel will address, among other subjects of great importance, what's taking place with the military tribunals, sealed and unsealed indictments, and the avalanche of arrests to come. Will justice be served? This and much more will be addressed each month, including an analysis of current events, making sense of the events as they unfold, one psyop after another. Detecting truth from lies in the dying age of fake news and the rising age of AI and digital enhancements will help you to remain focused and grounded in these most challenging, difficult, and dangerous final battles. A new day is dawning as this golden age is at the doorstep. Remain informed, empowered, and connected by an elite team of military and intelligence experts, and together we will save America. Subscribe for free at jmcbroadcasting.com and be sure to join us monthly. Eyes on Gitmo, wartime analysis. Nothing can stop what's coming, and the best is yet to come. Where we go one, we go all here at jmcbroadcasting.com.
All right, thank you for hanging in there with us. I want to thank our esteemed guests for their time and expertise in today's panel discussion addressing the issues that concern each and every one of us, not only here in America, but across the world. I'm certain you gleaned a lot of value from the time you spent in this episode. Quick announcements. We'll be out of here in about 60 seconds. Join me and Ricardo Bosi, retired Lieutenant Colonel Ricardo Bosi of Australia One Party in Australia, of course, each and every Monday. There he is. Each and every Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern, Bosi Briefs, very popular show where Ricardo basically weighs in on the events that just took place in the last week or so to keep us up to speed, dismantling the deception. Ricardo Bosi, Bosi Briefs. Also, contact Bill Armour. We've learned a lot in this episode about silver, gold, and this incredible opportunity. Bill will be joining us on the Global Financial Reset this Wednesday, January, I guess, whatever the date is, 7th, 8th. Anyway, this Wednesday, Global Financial Reset Live, Bill Armour and Will Barney will be joining us as well. Buy gold, buy silver, buy now. Give Bill Armour a call, 1-800-200-4653, I believe is the number. I hope I got it right. But visit jmcgenesismetals.com. That'll get you to Bill just the same. Anyway, that's a wrap. I want to thank everybody for joining us. Happy New Year. Be safe, stay alert, and may God be with you.